All right, let's get right into it. Today we're cracking open Neal Stephenson's incredible epic, The Mongoliad. And this is way more than just a story about knights and invaders. What we're really looking at here is a massive head-on collision between two totally different worlds, two mindsets, and two very different ways of fighting a war.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. The year is 1241, and for Europe, this is a time of absolute, heart-stopping terror. The Mongol Empire, this unstoppable force of nature, has just poured out of the east. Christian armies have been completely shattered, and they've left this unbelievable trail of destruction behind them.
And seriously, that's not an exaggeration. The book paints this absolutely brutal picture of a land that isn't just conquered, it's broken. They call it the Land of Skulls, and for good reason. It's a landscape of nothing but burned-out villages, slaughtered armies, and this constant, gnawing fear that the Mongols are going to come back and finish the job.
But, even in all this despair, a really desperate plan is starting to form. And it's up to an equally desperate group of guys to pull it off. A very secretive order of warrior monks. They call themselves the Shield Brothers.
Now, right away, you can see these are not your typical knights in shining armor. I mean, look at this crew. We've got a young kid still in training, a giant redhead, a Syrian doctor, even an archer who's adopted the enemy's own bow. They're a total collection of misfits, brought together not by some shiny ideal, but by the grim reality that the world is ending. So, what's their first big mission? It's kind of strange. They're not going to fight a battle. They're being sent to go get one man, a noble named Ilarion. Now, why him? Because Ilarion has seen the absolute worst the Mongols can do, and somehow he actually lived to tell the tale. See, the Mongols had this thing about not spilling noble blood needlessly. So for mass executions, they developed this method, the human carpet. They would bind their captives, lay them out on the ground, put planks over them, and then just have a party. They'd ride their horses back and forth on top until everything just went silent. And this is why he's so important. Ilarion, along with his wife and his daughter, was in that human carpet. He was left for dead in a mass of crushed bodies. But when Mongol looters showed up the next morning to cut off ears for their body count, Ilarion rose up out of the mud like a demon, killed them with their own blades, and just walked away.
Okay, so let's shift gears completely. We're going to leave all that blood and mud behind us and travel far, far to the east. We're heading into the rich, suffocating luxury of the Mongol capital, Karakorum, and the court of the most powerful man on earth, Ögedei Khan, the son of Genghis himself.
And this quote from the Khan, man, it says it all. It gets right to the heart of the irony of the Mongol Empire. While his armies are out there conquering the known world, Ögedei Khan feels like a prisoner. He's surrounded by silks and gold and paperwork, but all he really wants is the wind on his face on the open steppe, like when he was a warrior.
So you've got this guy who is literally at war with himself. He's the ruler of the biggest empire in human history, but he feels his true self, the warrior, just dying under this mountain of bureaucracy. And he tries to drown that feeling in wine, but honestly, it's just making him weaker. And you know what really gets him? He's haunted by who he used to be. The story gives us this intense flashback. He's 17, he's lost in a dust storm, arrow through the neck, bleeding out in the sand. That moment of pure terror, of near death and survival, that was more real to him than anything he gets to experience now as some so-called emperor. I mean, the cracks are really starting to show. His own brother doesn't even trust his leadership anymore. He sends this young warrior to Ögedei's court with a pretty humiliating job. Be the Khan's babysitter, and make sure he only drinks 1 cup of wine a day. The supreme ruler of the world is literally being managed like a child. So let's jump back to the west. The Shield brothers have found Ilarion. He's alive, but he's a wreck, feverish and half-mad. And as they're trying to sneak him back to safety, they walk straight into a whole new kind of nightmare. They find themselves on the battlefield of Lignica. In this place, it's a field of death, just littered with thousands upon thousands of bodies. And it's right here, in this open graveyard, that a Mongol patrol, 15 mounted archers, just materializes out of the mist and completely surrounds them.
So, what do? Put yourself in their shoes. There's 5 of them, and one can barely even stay on his horse. They are hopelessly, completely outnumbered. A straight-up fight would be suicide. They can't run, and there's nowhere to hide. What do? Well, this is where Ilarion's genius kicks in. He doesn't draw a sword. Nope. He puts on a show, a terrifying piece of theater. First, he has them all ride forward slowly, like a funeral procession. Then, he grabs his cloak and dramatically throws it over a skeleton, like he's making it rise up. And finally, he turns his ruined, earless, infection-swollen face to the Mongol leader, and he doesn't look like a man anymore. He looks like a ghost.
And the result? It's instant. The Mongol leader, relying on his own culture's deep-seated superstitions, just screams this phrase and bolts in absolute terror. The rest of his patrol just scatters into the mist, 100% convinced they just saw the dead rising from the battlefield. Okay, so let's pull back for a second. When you put those two scenes, the terrified patrol and the drunken Khan, side by side, you really start to see what this whole story is about. It's not just a war of swords, it's a war of ideas and weaknesses. What we're really seeing here are two completely different kinds of strength, right? On one side, you've got the Shield brothers. They're outnumbered, but that desperation makes them resourceful, makes them clever. On the other side, you've got the Mongol Empire, this seemingly unstoppable military machine, but its leadership is secretly rotting from the inside out, totally lost in booze and self-pity.
And that really is the big question the whole saga leaves us with, isn't it? When two worlds go to war, what's the thing that really decides who wins? Is it the size of your army? Or is the most dangerous enemy you will ever face the one that's growing right inside your own walls and inside your own mind?